Well, hey everyone, I'm Philip. I'm with Secure Edge, and I'm here with Jessica Reese with Checkpoint. Jessica, how you doing today?
Hey Phil, I'm good. How was your day going?
Uh, so I'm a little tired. I've been traveling a lot the last couple of days, but I'm good. I noticed you're in your home office.
I am,
Uh,
and we're bringing it real today. This platform doesn't offer backgrounds, so
well,
not holding
looking at your
anything back.
background, I actually have an idea for another webinar we should do on how to be a mom and
That's
have a
right.
big family and run
That's
your
right.
family and still be a busy executive.
Yes,
But I appreciate you joining me for the webinar today. Our
absolutely.
marketing team picked a very provocative topic on doubling your gross profit with network as a service that I know we're going to tackle in today. But before we get going, can you talk just a little bit about your background and what you do with Checkpoint?
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. Thanks. So right now I head up Checkpoint Strategic and Managed Service Provider Organization. And really what that means is that our group focuses on working with so many companies and partners, helping them to build out their go-to-market around cybersecurity strategies and create different service delivery models that's really tailored to their specific target market that they're going after. I've been in the cybersecurity industry for over a decade, and from the very beginning, that's really been my focus. And it's helped got us as a team to where we are now, really, and covering the expansive group of partners that we do today.
And roughly kind of like give me an idea of like the types of companies that you guys work with. And I'm talking about the
Yeah,
partners that are presenting the solution to the customer.
absolutely. So we cover a wide range of partners. Some of them are global technology leaders. We cover tier two telco organizations, and also down to the very regional MSPs that are focused on their community and servicing their market that they actually live and work in.
Okay, cool. All right, well, good. Well, good to have you on the call. And my name is Philip, for those of you who probably have never heard of me, but I own a company called Secure Edge. And Jessica and I have been working together for really 18 to 24 months. And we used to be a VAR slash MSP. And we ended up selling that company and then just building software. But the reason I explain that is simply because if you're on this call, you're a VAR, you're an MSP, you're building a network as a service program, likely, or considering that. And I did that for 15 years. So I was a CEO and built programs. So that's really why I'm joining Jessica for the conversation. But with that, let's go ahead and jump in here. Let's see if I can share this. Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we talk a little bit first, just about kind of what you're seeing. And I know you've got thousands of resellers and VARs, if you will, and MSPs that are selling Checkpoint. And then you also got an executive team that's talking to end customers about what their experience is working with the VARs, because that's really what
That's
your
right.
job is. So talk a
That's
little bit
right.
about some of the trends that you're seeing out there in the industry.
Yeah, if we kick off with really the trends we're seeing and the bigger picture opportunity with network as a service over the last few years, just as a human race, we've seen this increase, and we've had this expectation of moving to an online tech-based experience for everything that we were going through in life, right? We experienced this at a very personal and raw level, and in our day-to-day kind of like consumer lives. But we took all of that and all of that experience, and that flows now into the work that we do and the expectations that we have for our employers, for our employees, from all the companies that we work with, in whatever capacity that might be. And we hear this all the time. And so this new standard has been set for now the first trend of really a digital experience for everything that we do, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah. Keep
yeah.
going. I'm sorry.
Okay, I was going to say, I was just going to move on to the next trend. So I don't
Well,
know if
no,
you have
I think
anything you
it's
want to
funny.
add there.
I just to dive in on that a little bit. So obviously I owned a company for 15 years and we were selling stuff to customers. And one of the things that we thought was like a big problem is a customer can order a pizza and they get a tracker and they know exactly where it is when it's being made and everything. And then the pandemic kind of just sped that up where, you order sandwiches, you order groceries and all that. And there was actually, the stats are actually that there was a 300% increase in online marketplaces because customers just use that. And so just as like as a VAR or an MSP, the thing to consider is if my customer can get better tracking on a pizza than they can on $1 million in infrastructure, like they're going to be upset about that. It's kind of a problem that we need to address. I just thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah,
and this is the next.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, the next thing is we're hearing this new thing from customers that they really want to just have a solution. They just want whatever it is they need. They sometimes don't even know that, but whatever it is they need, they just want it to work. And MSPs have this unique ability to take that and whatever vendors they're choosing and really add it into a stack and offer that solution out to their customers. That whatever customer base they're going after, this is a way that they're differentiating themselves in the market that they're servicing, right? And as they take that and they differentiate themselves, the customers at the end, this is powered by, fill in the vendor name, it's becoming so less relevant, and it's superseded by the make things work, follow the SLAs, make sure they're met.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Yep, keep going.
This phenomenon is really where that as a service model begins to truly make sense for our MSP partners and how they deliver it to their customers or how they're able to.
100%, I love it. So one of the things that I saw as a company is we started really the business as a VAR. And then we would go to customers and we would sell them firewalls, we'd sell them security solutions, we'd sell them networking. And more like they would come to us and say, hey, I just want my stuff to work. Like I'm building this warehouse. And, of course, our sales team, we have sales engineers go in, hey, let me tell you about the throughput on this firewall. And when you turn on the security services, and we literally would have customers go, I don't really give a shit. Like, I really just want you to make things work in my facility. Can you do that? And we actually got an email from a CIO that literally said, the trail was our engineer telling him a bunch of technology stuff. And he literally responded back and said, hey man, I just want to pay a bill and I want my network to work in my warehouse. Can you do that?
That's right. Make it happen.
Like, the world is changing now. We're now in this new model. It's no longer innovative to sell them this stuff. It's now just infrastructure, and it's like a utility. And so I agree 100% with your thinking there.
That's right. And, so they want the digital experience. They want it just to work for them. They want it to cover everything that's going to be in their networks, but they need options. How do they actually make that happen? And so they look towards subscriptions as a very, very practical option for them when it comes to actually procuring all of these things that they want and need to happen, right? Now we pivot from just as a service is really important to now we're pivoting to network as a service, and a network as a service model is opportunity for these partners to deliver to their customers that next level of how do we differentiate? How do we innovate? How do we make different? And this is where we're seeing all of that opportunity today.
Yeah, so I agree 100%. Like specifically, and just thinking about this selfishly from the reseller's perspective, if you will, one of the opportunities with doing the subscription is you're really packaging things together and delivering an outcome. And when you're doing that, it just changes kind of the margins and the capabilities in it. Right. And I believe more and more we just need to present it really as an option. And so definitely trends that we saw. Now, from a motivational perspective, if you're on the call and you're a VAR and MSP and you're thinking about building this, there's a lot of kind of benefits that we saw when we moved into this, business model. Obviously, the first one is growing recurring revenue. And if you're on the call, that's really right here. You're thinking about growing recurring revenue. And if you can grow your recurring revenue, then your company is worth more and things like that. So huge opportunity there. And then the other thing we found is that you just sell a lot more when you offer the subscription option. You think about like how we buy houses and cars. Well, if everybody paid cash for their car, they probably wouldn't be driving, a Tesla. It'd probably be something a little bit more reasonable, right? So if you offer that subscription option, your customers can obviously afford more. So it's great for them. And the other thing we've heard, and I've heard this a lot recently, is that your company itself is not as much lumpy from a up and down perspective. And so if you're going into the pandemic, we had a lot of our customers that put purchases on hold and things like that. If your revenue is recurring and all that, it gives your company obviously a lot more opportunity to be stable. And then the other thing too that I think is something that people don't spend enough time thinking about is if you're transaction based. I'm talking about I'm going to ship you, or I'm going to come out and I'm going to configure your security services, whether it's firewalls and things like that. Well, that's really transaction in one time. But if I go in and I'm selling them a 60-month relationship where I'm now managing that on an ongoing basis, I now control that, or I own that relationship with my customer for delivering that outcome. So your retention is just way different, and you're not competing against a lot of necessarily the online, resellers and things like that. And so overall, it's obvious your company value increases, your MRR grows, and so there's just a lot of great opportunities. If I say a big if you can solve the riddle, if you will, of selling networks on subscription. And so let's talk. We talk about this. So let's get into like, how the hell do you do this? What are the options? I don't want to be a consultant and just say, here's all your problems. I actually want to be able to solve it. So first, let's talk about kind of the strategies on building. So could you unpack this just a little bit?
Yeah. So when you think about building or having network as a service as an offering, you've got two options. Well, really, you have three. Okay. 3 is to do nothing. Yeah. That's not why we're here today. Right. We don't have time to unpack that in and of itself today.
Wait to die, right? That's an option. That is an option. Yeah.
That's right. When we look at the two you have, you can choose to resell a program that somebody else has built out and is really making margins and revenue off of, or you can build your own program and be the one that benefits from that and have that direct connect out to your customer. So when we look at when you decide to resell a program, this isn't a bad option, right? If you have the resources and this makes sense for your business, this is an okay option, and people do it all the time. But when you do this, you're taking the margin stack and it's fundamentally changing. It is being allocated out to the manufacturer, the vendor that's delivering this, that you're just reselling. Okay. So if Checkpoint were to build some fantastic as a service model, yep, we would manage that offering, and you as the MSP would sell it out to your customers. The margin in this hypothetical situation, this shifts. This is now Checkpoint's margin, where Checkpoint is making that money, right? Yep. Again, not a bad option. We do this kind of business every day, but it's different. Your other option then, what can you do if that's not what you want to do? In reverse is to see where you can focus on building out your own and where you can see those profits. This is where the importance of a network as a service program being built by you, the MSP, that's where the service happens. That's where the service delivery happens between you and your customer. And this is where it should happen. This is what makes you sticky, keeps that customer attention. All those great things Phil just talked about. Yeah. By delivering this, creating this, and differentiating yourself in this manner, this is where you build that customer base that you're looking for.
Yeah. So I got to pipe in here just because I have such strong opinions. Yeah. So no, I don't even know this, but I actually do. I think Mr. Robbie would say potentially too strong. That's a personal problem. So a couple of things here. So I obviously, as a VAR and MSP for 15 years, there's a lot of manufacturers that are coming out and they're offering essentially their own programs. And I'm not going to mention any manufacturers by names, but there's several that have raised a lot of capital recently. And what they're doing is they're telling the traditional MSP or VAR to resell their program. And again, nothing wrong with that. I agree with you in your approach. Is there's nothing wrong with that. Just understand what you're doing is a really important part. And what you're doing is you're saying, I'm not going to be the provider. I'm going to resell somebody else's program. They're going to be the provider. And so I'm willing to do that. I'm now a broker of a relationship instead of the relationship owner. And so there's two significant differences. One is I'm changing my profit structure as a company because I'm no longer reselling products and things like that. I'm now giving that away and I'm reselling, that or whatever. But the biggest problem I have with it is the relationship problem. And that I believe if you're on this call and you're a VAR MSP, you should own that customer relationship. And you likely have already owned that for several years. And so giving that up is really if I was a VAR still, I would say, nope, I'm going to own the relationship. It's my customer, so I would have a short with it. So I agree with this kind of approach. Now, you as an executive with a manufacturer, you have to be a little bit torn between the two models. Do you have kind of a preference on how you think about the problem?
A preference, no. I think they both have their own applicability based on the type of business that we're doing. As we work with companies to build out go-to-market strategies and service delivery, it's heavily weighted in this area where they're differentiating, they're owning the relationships, they're
Right.
building out the offerings, and the customer in most of these situations, like I said, don't know it's Checkpoint.
Right.
Right? It's powered by Checkpoint, but it's
Right.
really the partner that is putting their name and their branding and their reputation around it to deliver out. It is important in those situations that they have that relationship and that direct connect with the partner. We're there on the back end supporting everything that they do.
I love it. Okay. All right. So now I want to go into as I'm assuming if you're on the call, you are here to learn about how to build a program. And so for context here, so I owned Securage for 15 years as a VAR and MSP. The last 5 years, we spent it trying to figure out how do we take a network and package it to the customer essentially on a consumption basis. And we had all sorts of problems doing that. And so I want to talk about kind of the 5 things. So if you're thinking about doing this, let me tell you the things you got to figure out essentially as an IT company. The first thing is you have to have some sort of customer experience. And I'm talking specifically about a customer portal. And what I mean by that is if let's say you're reselling a vendor, whether it's, Checkpoint, you wouldn't want your customer necessarily logging in to the management console, if you will. You really want them logging into your customer console, if you want to think about it. And so think about when you buy something from Amazon, when you buy something from, let's say, even an ISP, like a Spectrum or whomever, you're logging into a portal, you're opening ServiceX. So you have to rethink your customer experience and what that needs to look like. And it needs to be yours. It needs to be built around you and the service you provide to the customer. The second thing is, and this powers kind of the customer portal side, is you really have to have a connected tech stack. And what's really interesting about a lot of these, we're talking about customer experience and, what the customers expect. And what's really interesting, if you go inside of VAR MSP and you just ask, like, tell me about how your systems are working. Are they integrated together? Does your CRM talk to your ITSM? Does your ITSM talk to your PSA? What we find is that it's very, very fragmented. And so we really have to build this connected stack. And I don't mean just internally. I also mean with partners like a Checkpoint, which is why we're here talking to you, is the service provider, like you said earlier, the MSP facing the customer has to be connected to Checkpoint on the back end. But to the customer, it's essentially one experience. And that comes with that kind of fully integrated tech stack. And then the third problem that's I think is somewhat obvious, but something that maybe people don't think a tremendous amount about is you really have to integrate the finance into the workflow of your sales team. So if you think about, again, how you buy a house or buy a car, in those industries, 85% of the transactions are financed in some way. And the forecast in the actual IT world is actually 75% of everything that customers buy will be subscription-based in the future. And so we have to start thinking about how do we embed essentially that whole process into the workflows. And then the fourth kind of big problem is, since we're talking about problems, is you've got to have what's called configure price quote or CPQ software that's really built around selling on subscription. And I've had so many conversations this week with large VARs who are trying to build out these types of practices. Some of them are hundreds of millions, and one was actually well over $1 billion in revenue. And their biggest problem was, how do I get my team to quote this? Because they've been quoting firewalls for 20 years. How do we get them to sell services from my company? And so that's a big problem. And then the fifth one is the services lifecycle. And what I mean by this is, like I said earlier, you're no longer just selling a point solution. You're now owning the relationship for 60 months. And if you own the relationship for 60 months, it's no longer enough just to say, oh, I can go and install it and configure it. What about supporting it on the back end? And what about offering, updates on the software and things like that to keep that system up to date? And so you have to think about the entire life cycle of, let's say, a checkpoint security solution, whether it's a firewall or endpoint technology. You've got to think about that entire life cycle of deploying it and managing it. And this can create some kind of holes for the IT companies. Do you have any comments on that? Or
Yeah, I was just going to say, Phil, it's really interesting when we go in and talk to partners and they excel in 1, 2, 3 of these different areas, right? They have it down. They've been doing it the same way for a long time. And they don't need help. But when we talk about these 5 areas all together in unity, things tend to quickly fall apart and not be as rosy as they may seem.
Okay, so if you can solve these 5 things, and I'm not saying that they're not daunting and hard, I want to talk about the numbers. So, and this is mostly just to explain exactly what the math looks like if you decide to do it. Now, I was at an event this week, and that's one of the reasons I'm tired, is I was at an MSP event on Monday. And what was interesting when you talk to like purebred MSPs, like managed service providers, like purebred, they built the whole company on recurring revenue, which is awesome and impressive. They seem to not care about selling the equipment. And they're like, oh yeah, I don't really care about selling it, whatever. I don't care, I'm just interested in managing the equipment. And I think that is a good approach, or an interesting approach, but I'm kind of like 2 things there. Like, one, your customer wants a solution, and the solution involves the equipment. So you really should consider packaging together. So customer first, like, what do they want? They want a solution. And then the second thing I would think about is, you're leaving a lot of money on the table, man. Like, why don't you just package it all together and make money? Like, I don't know what's
right.
And then the other side of the world is kind of the VAR world. And some of them are really, really good at just like selling the stuff, maybe even setting it up, but then they're leaving all the managed services on the table. I'm like, why aren't you building a managed services practice and and growing your recurring revenue? And so I want to talk a little bit about like why you should do both, like why you should be both a VAR and an MSP. I'm going to talk a little bit about like literally from a strict numbers perspective. So under network go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, it's so interesting right now where we've got partners that are doing one or the other really well, and their customers are now coming to them and asking for the other model, right? And what the partners are realizing is they either adapt or find a way to service these customers in the specific ways that they want.
Yeah.
Or these customers are starting to look for companies that will do it for them. And that flexibility that you're going to talk about now from a numbers perspective alone, but just in general, that flexibility is where we see a lot of our partners at more of an inflection point right now, where they've got to figure out a way to do it or risk losing that business.
I would 100% agree. I mean, it's obviously the future. And the answer, if it's written on the wall, is if you look at AWS as a business model, okay, we used to sell servers and we used to go in and sell storage and all that. AWS essentially packaged a solution, called it cloud, and now they sell a data center as a service. And customers went to that model. It was one of the fastest growing models in the history of the world. Actually, it was the fastest growing. And so it's a model that we have to look at and go, how do we do that as IT companies? How do we go in and provide that? And in our model, what we're saying is you present to your customer essentially on subscription. Now, I'll point out that not all customers want to consume it that way, but what I would propose is that you always present it that way. And then you let them back it off if that's not how they want to do it. Hey, I've got some capital to spend up front, but you lead with the subscription. And I can tell you this from experience, because 5 years ago, I was skeptical of this, okay? When I got our sales team to pitch the subscription model first, the customer chose the subscription 80% of the time. Absolutely. And so for those of you that have been selling firewalls out there and think that that's, BS or something, get your team to pitch it and then watch what happens. But that was the experience that we had. Now, the way the numbers work, if you lead this way, And this is actually real numbers utilizing our software, and I'll talk about that later. But this is a network as a service solution that we created. We're using Checkpoint as the edge security product, obviously, and by that I mean firewall solution. We're using a solution from HPE, and the bill of materials is here. I just wanted you to know it's not made up. It's actually real. We did this for a long time, so we built the actual real numbers. And the way that the math actually works here is, in a VAR kind of business model, you would go in and sell the customer a revenue. But the problem with this is if I go and present this only on a project basis, I'm really just selling one-time revenue. And so the way that the math would work out is I'd make $60,000 in top line revenue. I'd buy that for $49,000, and I'd make a gross profit of around $13,000, $15,000, depending on how you package your services. And then the other model, which is the MSP model, I wouldn't care about the equipment. I wouldn't make any money. I'm not worried about that. I'm too good for that. I'm going to just make money on the MSP service, and then I'm gonna do this way. And in that model, it's actually very good as well, where I'm getting paid monthly on a monthly basis over the term. But what happens when I merge those things together? If I'm able to sell the equipment up front, wrap it into a subscription with the customer, and package all that together into a subscription over the term, what happens with my total contract value is it actually doubles. And so we talked about that, is your gross profit actually doubles over the term. There's one mistake on here that I'll point out, is that this says on the right, it says total contract value. That's actually just revenue monthly and not the contract value. But on the left, where you have network as a service provider, that's actually the math of what this looks like. And this is actually our experience being a VAR. Being a network as a service provider.
Absolutely. So what you're saying is the customers are asking for this, and you can double your revenue?
I am saying that.
Okay.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Sounds like a great problem.
Exactly. And you go in the relationship for 60 months.
Right.
Which is another kind of huge benefit to the business model. So the problem is, all this kind of stuff sounds great, but what you'll notice is that we did some creative financing. We tied it all together into a customer subscription, and all this kind of stuff is very complicated. And so obviously what we do as a company, or not obviously, but SecureEdge today is a software company. And the reason why we decided to become a software company is because there wasn't really an easy way to build this as a service provider. And so we actually started building software for ourselves to solve this kind of complex workflow problem. And then when we built the software, we showed it to some of our friends that owned other VARs and MSPs. We also showed it to partners like you. And you all said kind of the same thing. Hey, the software you created would be useful to other VARs and MSPs. So if you could get rid of your services business and then help us with the software, then we could help sell more Checkpoint using your.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And when we think about going back to the main question, like how does a partner do this for themselves, right? And maybe in a more simplified way. If we talk about building the program yourself, and when you're set on building it, then what's your best option here? Where can you at least start, or think about even biting off this big, maybe tedious task that looks to loom in front of you, right? And the best thing to do there would be to plug yourself into a framework that already exists. And when we talk about that, think about Central Office. It's a network as a service platform that has all of the pieces that you already need in place to be able to deliver those services. It plugs into the tools that you're already existing and already using today, and it helps streamline the entire process for you, sales into fulfillment, into management, and then beyond that into whatever else your customer relationship might look like. Going back to what people are asking for, this is giving you that digital experience. This is giving you the opportunity to offer your customer just that overall solution. It's a solution. We've got it all. And it also provides them that option to buy through subscription. And that's a really practical option that people do want to hear about.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the software that we created that Jessica was talking about is called Central Office. And we designed it specifically as a software platform for IT service providers, we say, which includes VARs and MSPs. And it was designed to do all the things that we're talking about today. So the way to think about this is it's really a hybrid of three types of software. The first category that you would think about it is we built essentially a marketplace with APIs, and we did this so that you could have a connected tech stack. And so we built integration directly with the distributors you're working with, like Ingram Micro. We built programs into it from Checkpoint, obviously, that we're here to talk about today. We built integration with finance partners to make it easy to build subscriptions. And then we also made it integrate with your existing software. So CRMs, ITSMs, PSAs, we don't really care what your stack looks like. This was designed essentially to glue that together. And then the other layer that we built, which was the more complicated layer, was the configure price quote software. So on our platform, you can produce network as a service quotes in a few minutes. And that was a process that used to take us literally several weeks with engineering and all that. And so we really had to figure out how do we automate that kind of process. So we built that CPQ kind of functionality. And the last thing that we created is we created a commerce system as well. So if you think about that customer experience, what does your customer log into? We can give you one of those if you don't have one, or we can interact with one if you already have one. So our system is commerce with APIs that we can talk to something and sell in that kind of online experience. So the idea here is it's simply something you just turn on, connect to your existing systems, and then you're off and off to the races. Now, the way this ties back into your Checkpoint relationship is that Jessica and I have been having 18, 24 months of meetings.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about our relationship and what we've done with Checkpoint.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of that time, talking about the synergies between the companies and why it makes sense for Checkpoint partners to leverage this to sell more Checkpoint. We built out templated and pre-configured bundles that include Checkpoint as one of the technologies. Okay. It's really important to say here that I understand Checkpoint as a whole understands, Phil understands, Checkpoint is a component of your customer's network. We are not all of it. They're going to have other network requirements that are outside of what Checkpoint does.
Yep.
Central Office gives the ability to pull those bundles that we've pre-configured around Checkpoint solutions and simply, in a simplistic way, order the network needs for your customers, right? That's multiple components that they're required to have in a really seamless platform of Central Office. The other thing to keep in mind is these bundles that have been built, including Checkpoint, so including other vendors, they're really based and configured on individual customers' needs, right? So what their network needs are, what market segment they fall into, all of these unique characteristics of your market, whatever that is, have been taken into consideration and built into the tool already for you.
Yeah, so I love that. One of the things that we spend a lot of time doing is working with your solutions engineers and thinking about, if I go to my customer and I'm no longer just selling them whatever I can sell them, right? I'm really designing a solution that meets an SLA based on the customer type. And so if I go into a retail environment, I don't necessarily need to sell them a really expensive, the most expensive firewall. I might sell them something that really fits based on the usage in that type of facility.
That's right.
And as a service provider, what we were trying to figure out how to do is how do we standardize our solutions based on our customers' needs, which is what you were talking about. And the answer is I have to think a little bit differently about delivering SLAs and things like that. So we're really trying to take a customer's needs and line that up with Checkpoint, and then make that really simple to design that inside the workflows. But what we found is that if we just can organize things in bundles, make it simple for your sales team to choose the right solution when they're running through essentially a workflow, you can sell a lot more stuff. So if you reduce friction in the sales process, you'll sell more. Like that's the thing here. And so we kind of boiled it down to some different things that we can talk about. So we have several hundred. It's actually 200 or more that we built into the software. And we've ran the numbers on this. It's actually way more than 10 times faster, but 10 times sounds really good. So we said 10 times, because if you said like 13 times, whatever, but it is way faster to build quotes like this, on the platform. And then what we're working on is automating a lot of the costs and the pricing. So we made it so you can set your pricing on a standard way, so you can automate that to your customer. We worked with both Checkpoint and partners to figure out, how do you fill in those service gaps if you don't have things like a NOC service, as an example. And then we designed it so that it can automate some of the bill of materials creation, and then take essentially anything and convert it into a subscription. I know I'm rambling here, but do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, this is great. And I think it's really important to call out that, as a partner, if you're listening to this and you're like, this is great, but it's more than I need, because in that one area of those 5, I've got it down. That's okay. Keep doing what you're doing, and leverage. You have the flexibility to leverage central office in those areas that will give you the ability to offer a robust network as a service option to your customers. Not that you want to cherry pick. As a platform, it's great, but if you've got your own knock and talk, okay, let's talk about everything else that this is going to benefit you and your customers with.
100% agree. Okay, so with that, that's actually most of the content we had today. So we're going to do a couple things, and then I think we're going to, I don't know where our host went, but I think we're going to answer a couple questions if people had questions. And so talk a little bit about if the people on the call are not a Checkpoint partner today, how do they sign up, all that kind of process?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead and visit the website, and I think we're going to put it in the chat too. Learn more about the Checkpoint partner ecosystem, how to become a Checkpoint partner. Join the Checkpoint community right there, and let us work with you to help you build out your security go-to-market strategies for your target markets. And let's talk more about how you can sell and deliver Checkpoint as a service, as part of your network as a service offering through central office.
I love it. And then if you're an existing Checkpoint partner and you're interested in learning a little bit more about central office and how you can sell more with it, we created a really short link here that's only 75 characters long for you to take a look at. So,
that was not going to that. You have to memorize that one.
We're going to send that out in the notes as well, and then you can have access to that. Okay, so how do we? I don't know if Danny's still here. How do we check for questions? Okay,
Phil, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. We had one come into the chat.
Okay.
Over here, and then I have a couple others that have come in as well.
Okay, cool.
So the first one over here is, how expensive is central office?
Very, very tactical. Very tactical question. So central office is if you go to the link that we had, the pricing is all online. The short answer is it starts at $300 a month and it goes up from there. And we charge for the access to the platform, and then monthly active team members. So how many people do you have using the software? We designed it to be very service provider friendly, if you will. And what we mean by that is we wanted the entire team to be able to use it. And so we didn't go with the traditional per user license model because then you end up signing stuff to your users and then they don't use it. And that sucks for everybody. And so the way we designed it is you access the platform, you invite everybody, and then we bill you based on usage. But all that stuff is public knowledge. It's on our service provider website. If you go to securedgenetworks.com, click on for service providers, and then there's a pricing page there.
There's another one that came in that kind of piggybacks off that.
Okay.
And it asks about what's the onboarding process.
Okay.
And are there onboarding fees?
Yeah. The onboarding fees depends on how many things we're integrating with. And the process is about 30 days is about how long it takes to get set up. And it really depends on the size of the company and then how many tools we have to integrate with. This is actually an interesting stat. The average IT company or service provider, if you will, that we're onboarding, we're integrating with 5 different tools. And that's including, like an Ingram Micro, Salesforce, a HubSpot. And what that's just really interesting is that it's kind of sitting in the middle. It's that kind of digital connectivity, if you will, amongst all these different tools. And so it depends on how many things you have, or if you want us to do some sort of custom stuff. But it's a pretty simple process where our team is doing most of the work.
Got it. Another one came in about bundles,
Yeah.
specifically asking what types of Checkpoint bundles already exist.
Okay. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've focused on the specific markets that your customers might be in. And so Phil gave the example of a retail. So in a retail environment, what does that look like? What kind of security needs are there on site? Maybe back ending to a data center or a corporate office. And so we've built out based on the configurations you put in there, trying to ensure that we've hit all of the security features that your customer would be looking for to secure their entire environment. There's over 200 of them, lots to choose from, and you can always go in and configure your own as well. Right? These are templates that are extremely customizable if you don't find just what you're looking for.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit because that's really, really important that you mentioned that. So if you think about a lot of bundles that you get from, let's say, a distributor or from your just manufacturer only, that's good because it's all that might be the firewall with the licensing and support, which is great. But what an IT company, what we have to do is we have to take that, package our own services in with it. And so the bundle is really our bundle made up of their bundle, if that makes sense, with all the things we do, and then we have to sell it to a customer. And so you have to have the ability to tie that together. We spent a lot of time working on that and making it so that the MSP can add their services to a Checkpoint bundle, and then they can simply sell that to the customer inside the workflow. That's a really good question.
That actually answered another question, which was around editing bundles, so that's good.
Okay.
The other one that came in was, let me read this here. It's pertaining to kind of going back to the numbers that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And just how does the payout process work when you're getting paid your one-time revenue and recurring revenue?
Yep.
In terms of when it's actually implemented and actually how the payouts work.
That's a really good and long answer, but that's a really smart question. So the first is that we talk about the platform having integrated financial services, and what that meant is that we actually spent 2 years working with some big financial providers like Wells Fargo, as an example, and literally integrating their technology financing into the platform itself. And so if you think about just financing in general, most of us aren't set up to do that. I have to check a customer's credit. I have to take these things that were one-time charges and convert those into a subscription-based model. And it's actually fairly complicated. When we had a VAR, it was 16 steps that we counted just for financing. And I was like, this can't scale. This is not going to work. And so we essentially built that process into the software. And so the way that the software will work is the order and everything looks the same into an Ingram Micro or TD SYNNEX where you're placing that order. But the cash flow to the IT company, the revenue gets paid up front, and then it gets paid on a recurring basis. And all that happens essentially inside of the platform. And then there's one more question that came up in the chat. And it was, is there some sort of documentation that we can send out to reference at a later date? And Danny, are we sending out a document after this?
Yeah. So in addition to, everybody's going to get a recording of the webinar so they can have it on demand, right? And then we do have some additional documentation that we can send out. There is a handout here as part of the webinar. It's probably a little bit more high level, so it just depends. So they can get with us as well. And we can send them some more information.
Cool. Okay. And we're planning a couple more webinars in this series. The next one, we're going to talk about really rounding out your practice. And if you're going to build something, we're going to dive into what partners should you think about when you're building your network as a service practice that can really help you deliver it. And then the last one is what everybody wants to talk about, and that's about automation. How do you build automation into your workflows, and specifically what should you build into your workflow so you can automate as much of this process as possible. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know you're extremely busy with family and work and everything. So thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Phil, for having us. This was really great. It's so important. A great message for our partners to hear.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody.